Bank of Canada has said that this government's deficit spending is driving inflation, that inflation is costing $3,500 for the average Canadian. And furthermore, we're facing a heat crisis over the winter. The Liberals say they're going to buy everyone a heat pump, but according to McLeod-Laurie Insurance Group, many insurance companies will not accept heat pumps as a main source of heat. That's because they can't be counted on to keep the pipes from freezing. So instead of distracting with promises that won't work, why won't the Liberals cancel their plan to triple the carbon tax and raise home heating prices?
Well, Deputy Prime Minister.
Providing dental care for all Canadian children under 12 is not a promise that won't work. That is a commitment that starts this Thursday, and it means that never again will a Canadian parent of young children need to choose between buying the groceries, paying the rent, or taking their kid to the dentist. That is something for us all to celebrate. When it comes to fiscal responsibility, Canada has a AAA rating and the lowest debt and deficit in the G7.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the question was about home heating. The NDP has voted to raise home heating prices. They voted against our motion to take the carbon tax off home heat, and they did it right before a winter where analysts expect that home heating prices will double. Now the Liberals say they'll buy everyone a heat pump, which insurance companies say will not be insured because you need a backup heat supply in order to keep the pipes from freezing. So instead of coming up with new schemes, why don't they just cancel the tax so Canadians can stay warm this winter?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, and I certainly think that we can all agree that affordability is an incredibly important issue for Canadians, for all Canadians. That is why we have done a number of things, including doubling of the GST benefit, enhancement to the workers' benefit, and investments in energy efficiency to ensure that we are addressing affordability. It's also the case, no matter what the opposition tries to say, that 8 out of 10 Canadian families actually get more money back than they pay in the price on pollution. And I would say every member on that side of the House, including the Leader of the Opposition, campaigned on a platform of putting in place a price on pollution. What does he say to his constituents now?
I don't know. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, I say to my constituents that we want them to have lower, not higher home heating bills. As for his claim, the Parliamentary Budget Officer says that when you take into account both the financial and economic costs of this government's carbon tax, that 60% of people paying it will pay more than they get back in any rebate. That is published information, and it's only going to get worse as the Liberals triple the tax with the help of the NDP. We're headed into a cold winter. Canadians need to heat their homes. It is not a luxury. Will they cancel their plan to triple the tax?
The Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, with respect, the honourable member has now made the most bizarre argument I could have possibly imagined when it comes to inaction on climate change. He's now suddenly opposed to heat pumps. Heat pumps have the ability to reduce pollution in our community and bring the cost of power down, or heat, for homeowners who live in my community. This is particularly important as we're coming up on the winter season, and I'm so pleased to have been able to make an announcement in my hometown last week that will provide an upfront grant of up to $5,000 for homeowners to help them lower their heating bills every month. Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue to do what's right for climate change, but because we know the cost of inaction is simply too great to ignore.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
In the recently published government strategy on the Indo-Pacific, they say, and I quote, "In areas of profound disagreement, we will challenge China, including when it engages in coercive behavior or ignores human rights obligations." There's a wave of protests across China right now, and there are now reports of government crackdowns against those protests. If the government is serious about what it put in its strategy, then will they indicate to Beijing that the peaceful protests should be allowed to go ahead and that any crackdown should be resisted?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
So we are following the unfolding events in China very closely. We remain in close contact with our embassy and consulate. We believe in freedom of expression at home and abroad, including in China, and that protesters should be able to peacefully protest and share their views without fearing for their safety. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to follow the events very closely. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Loire.
Mr. Speaker, let me sum it all up. According to Global News, there was Chinese interference in the 2019 election. At least 11 candidates are believed to have been funded by China. Intelligence agencies reportedly notified the Prime Minister's office as early as January of this year. We've been trying to get to the bottom of this, but there's no clear answers from the Prime Minister nor from the Minister of Foreign Affairs, as if secrecy somehow served democracy. I'll put the question another way. Are we to understand that the Global News story is fake news? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, we take all threats of foreign interference very seriously. And that's why we created not just one, but two independent panels that confirmed the results of both elections, both in 2019 and 2021. And we will continue to provide the National Security Committee all the tools it needs, and the Public Safety Committee as well, so that they can protect our democratic institutions. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. Mr. Speaker, let's say there was no Chinese interference in the financing of 11 candidates, let's just say. But we do know there's a real risk. Just think of the Chinese researchers at the Winnipeg lab, the undercover Chinese police stations in Toronto, or the spying at Hydro-Quebec. To believe there's no threat of Chinese interference in the election process is, let's just say, naive. Instead of bluster, will the government recognize that public funding of political parties would be a good way to protect the integrity of our elections? The Honourable Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. Mr. Speaker, we obviously share the colleagues' sentiments about how important it is to protect our election system and our elections, and that's why our government did take action years back by setting up a panel set up by the Clerk of the Privy Council and intelligence experts specifically to ensure that Canadian elections are free and open. And that's what was confirmed in 2019, and good news, Mr. Speaker, in 2021 as well.
Member for North Island, Powell River.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are struggling to keep up with rising food costs. Canada's biggest grocer, Loblaws, made $556 million in profits in 3 months. While first-time visits to food banks go up by 64%, the Loblaws CEO is just getting richer. The NDP called on the Liberals to make this right and make them pay their fair share, but Canadians have yet to see any action. Will the Liberals stand up with everyday Canadians and make these people pay their fair share?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our government is absolutely committed to ensuring that everyone pays their fair share. That's why we are taking action by permanently raising the tax on financial institutions and insurers by 1.5%, by introducing a Canada Recovery Dividend of 15%, and by introducing a luxury tax on luxury private planes, yachts, and luxury cars. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Elmwood.